I'm Jo Wright, and this is the Coaching Culture Podcast, where we discuss how to make work better. Hello and welcome to the Coaching Culture Podcast. My name is Jo Wright, and today I've got a really interesting guest joining me, and that is Dr. Toomas Sarev, who is a cardiologist, consultant cardiologist in the NHS at the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital. So it's fabulous to have you on the podcast today, Dr. Toomas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor.
We've got such a lot to talk about because the reason I invited you onto our podcast was because you and I have been connected for quite some time on LinkedIn for our mutual passion of all things coaching and building a coaching culture. And when I realized your role, I found it really fascinating that actually you are also an executive coach, but you also work in a high-pressured environment. So before I steal your thunder, I'd love you to share with our listeners today a little bit more about your story and then what brought you into your interest in coaching.
Thank you very much. As the story is colorful because perhaps you know I'm coming from Estonia, and I'm an Estonian. Estonia is a very small country, just 1.3 million people, and Estonians are usually quite successful. So, and my story started actually in my teenage years because my aunt worked with medical psychology, and in her company there were a lot of doctors, and I found it extremely fascinating just listening to their stories and challenges and seeing their passion. And then my aunt did quite many psychological experiments with me, and somehow that ignited this kind of interest. And at first, obviously, the interest was medicine, and I went to study medicine at Tartu University, which is the second oldest Swedish university in Estonia. And then by accident and just coincidence, met some people and went to work in Finland 1990 and did my training, and then I worked there about 12 years then later in Sweden. And then 2010 I started to work in this country, in the UK, and I found a dream job which is still very fascinating, and I like it very much. And then interestingly, you see, there is a certain development and trend during our lives, and I hated anything related to leadership. I was thinking that leadership is the worst thing anyone can do, and there were a lot of bad examples also in 90s and early 2000. But then I took a leadership course and was picked up a role as a cardiology lead in a smaller hospital, James Patchett Hospital, and that was really, really fascinating and somehow a real eye opener. And somehow it clicked in my head that yes, that interest in psychology, this leadership thing, actually being a doctor, it all comes together. And then 2017, all of a sudden, our service director resigned, and I was thinking that if I do not use this opportunity, I might miss it. And I applied for this post, and I was already quite interested, more deeply interested in leadership, and did quite a bit of reading and also took some further courses. And I found that, and I got the post, and I found that during this, actually, the secret kind of sauce was not talking and telling what to do, but listening to people and asking questions. And I think I did coaching without knowing it exactly what it is, and all the theories and practice behind that, the whole thing. And I found it very interesting. I was also a praiser for my colleagues, and I always asked a lot of questions. Sometimes they were a little bit upset, why is he asking these questions? This is just a tick box exercise. But it isn't. It's like your
No.
personal little journaling
Yeah.
attempt. You can connect the dots and go back in time.
Yeah.
And then uh, pandemic hit, and my 3 years time came over. My contract ended, and I was in a kind of crossroads. I was thinking that, okay, if I have more support, I could carry on, but support was failing. And when you are in a situation with a lot of challenges and low support, you
Yeah.
become overwhelmed. And I thought that, okay, it's enough. It's good for my mental health to do something else. And then you see again, interesting thing happened. I listened to a podcast, the Art of Manliness podcast,
Yeah.
uh, where Rebecca Newton, Dr. Rebecca Newton, gave an interview about her book, Authentic Gravitas. And as an active person, I then contacted her via
Did
LinkedIn
you?
just to ask some questions. And actually, I wanted her to be part of my podcast, which because of the pandemic, it never happened, and it's still on my to-do list. But basically, this then brought me to coach advisor company and their training, and then I decided that yes, I want to take coaching training. And at the same time, I did also a very interesting inner MBA training, which is organized by the New York University, LinkedIn, uh, then some other companies, Sounds True and Wisdom 2.0. And there were, when I look at my bookshelf, there were all the authors in the faculty, and it was super exciting and interesting,
Definitely.
and the real mental investment. And this, together with the coaching training, basically gave me this kind of platform where I am at the moment. And that's the
Wow.
story.
That is a fabulous story. I love the fact you hated all things leadership.
Yeah,
You've
yeah, I
gone, you've
hate it.
gone, you've gone, you've gone full circle there. Hated leadership to
Yeah,
now, by the sounds of it, being
yeah,
fascinated, and it's all built
yeah,
up, hasn't it, through psychology, leadership,
yeah,
possibly learning from some bad examples maybe in the early 90s,
exactly.
but
Yeah,
so it sounds like you've had some great inspirations along the way, those moments where
yes.
you've connected the dots and thought, hang on, there's something in here. And so how do you go about practicing coaching? Because I can only imagine that, your job, because you're still um, practicing
Yeah,
cardiology, aren't you? You're
yeah.
still at the sharp
There
end,
are,
as it were.
yeah, there are many levels putting this into practice. One is that I do to keep up my skills and hand in this.
Yeah,
I I do pro bono coaching for some colleagues at the moment,
brilliant.
and uh, but then I put coaching into my daily, you know, beings and doings, and
Yeah,
also, when I deal with my trainees, younger colleagues, they often, when I'm working in the cath lab, we are digging in someone's arteries. Then my trainee comes and asks, uh, Dr. Sarah, what should we do? And I ask them back often that if you would be the most resourceful interventional cardiologist, so what would you do? And then they come up with a plan. And also, um, I stopped asking why questions in a
yeah.
normal conversational setting. I always ask what made you
What?
to decide in this way, or something which is not so, putting you into kind of defense, and that all helps. And just listening and not giving any advice, taming your advice monster, which is so powerful. Sometimes this advice monster wants to come out, but there is no point, because as we know, we all our learnings are not coming from the cortex, but the most powerful learning comes from deeper down, from your limbic brain related
Yes.
structures. And I
Yeah.
think these aha experiences are more important than someone coming to tell you what is right thing from their perspective.
Yeah. So you
So
are actually coaching while you are working in somebody's arteries. Is that have I understood that correct?
yeah, basically, I have this kind of coaching approach to conversations, and
Awesome.
I often listen and ask questions, um, many questions, and sometimes you have to obviously, give advice. You can't coach people out of a burning house, or when you are in emergency, then you need to take more command role, but then you can reflect on things, and
Yeah.
uh, so that's my dog now barking. I can't help.
That's
There is someone behind the door. We can cut it out
that's
later.
fine. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yes.
That's fine. Not a
So
problem. Let me just write that down.
yeah,
Dog, dog barking at minute 11.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, this just sounds fascinating. And have you
Hmm.
seen or felt any level of change since the pandemic in the styles that either others have
Mm.
adopted? What's going on there? What's the reality now?
It is interesting and a really good question. So my reflection on that is that prior to the the pandemic started, we complained and moaned about that. We are too busy, we have no time to think, and we just push to do things. Then it all started as a kind of whirlpool. It was just
Yeah.
terribly busy time. Everybody changed all the working patterns, and everything changed. And then I guess some people discovered that actually it's easier to be in the firefighting mode, because then you do not need to do the heavy lifting, the thinking thing, because thinking is hard work. You need
Mm.
time. You need to stop what you're doing. You need to step back, take a deep breath, look at your own stuff. With kind of um, little bit like a zoom out things, and uh, take a bigger picture. But that's really difficult because it's hard work, and some of my colleagues probably like this firefighting now more, and that obviously causes some problems, because now being in the firefighting mode, you can land anywhere, and then you have no control over your
Yeah.
own life and work and thinking. And at the same time, from the management's perspective and leadership perspective, it's more and more telling culture like, and there is more command and less asking questions, which is really bad, because this completely disconnects you and causes mistrust, because you see medicine is becoming more and more complex, and every specialty has own specifics, and also own specifics related to patients, how they are managed, how they are followed up. There are so many little details,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, a manager who comes from non-medical background, often, and has no medical understanding, should really ask the question: so how would you deal with this challenge we have? What would be the best, from your perspective? How should we solve that, instead of coming to tell us how to solve that? And then what happens is that you look at your plate, you do not like it because it's all wrong, you push it back, and there is no progress, and there is
Mm-hmm.
less happiness also,
Yeah.
and less job satisfaction. And I find that in these situations where I have been able to ask questions which help people to zoom out and take a deep breath and pause for a second, there is more happiness, and there is more satisfaction in the end, because they feel that they are uh, part of the process. They haven't lost their autonomy. They
Mm-hmm.
are respected, and that builds trust, which is trust is a currency which is like in deficit at the moment in the NHS, unfortunately. And you see, it's like Patrick Lencioni's five dysfunctions. You can see it
Routines, yeah.
anywhere. And if I put this into my context, my own working environments context, then I can see the types which Patrick Lencioni describes in his book. And although this is completely different environment, he is describing an IT team, but the same characters are all around us, and it's
Indeed.
like universal. And I think trust is the first big issue where we should start, and how to build trust. You are transparent, you are honest, you are open, you talk to each other, you communicate, you listen to each other, you respect each other, and that builds trust, and you keep your promises. So
You're very much
yeah.
talking our language here at Coaching Culture. We talk about trust all the time, and we
Hmm.
talk about how a coaching culture is
Yeah.
absolutely about those
Hmm.
leaders and managers having
Yeah.
effective conversations, feedback, but underpinned by trust.
Hmm.
That trust is so, so important.
Yeah.
And that's the basis of any relationship, isn't it,
Hmm.
at the end of the
Yeah.
day? And I'd love us, more people in more professions and industries, and to demystify coaching, and to really boil it down to, this is about a way of communicating,
Hmm.
a way of being, a way of holding
Hmm.
space with others.
Yeah.
And I can tell from everything that you're saying how important it is to yourself.
Hmm.
How much do you manage to influence others in the environment that you're working within, from your level in the
Hmm.
NHS? You're very senior there.
I have so far had two occasions where I have given talk on our grand round meeting about
Yeah.
what is coaching, and basically just describing the very very basics. Often people in the medical profession, they are extremely passionate about their thing, and they often have no time to explore any other areas than their own, and they are writing talks later in the evening, reading medical
Mm-hmm.
professional literature, keeping up their networking with colleagues, and it's a kind of, so you build an isolation by going more
Yeah.
towards the tip of the mountain, where you live in your super specialized world. Although actually, going up to the mountain should give you a little bit more perspective, but often there
Yes.
is no time, and also there is sometimes no interest to look into other areas. And then sometimes what I have also observed is that we doctors lack leadership skills, and just certain kind of way of thinking when you communicate with others. And we are problem solvers, you see. We are experts in problem solving. We go deep down into kind of granularity of problems, and we like it. We can spend hours, solving problems, but sometimes solutions are somewhere else, and
Yeah.
and you need to zoom out to see the little path from where you are now and where you want to be, and then think about what would be the next step, and instead of being stuck in the problem solving. And in this respect, um, spreading this knowledge, what is coaching, that coaching is something which actually is a very powerful learning tool. It
Hugely.
it doesn't need any specific training actually to improve your
Yeah.
interactions with your colleagues, when you learn just some basic listening skills, and not listening just to respond but listening with curiosity. What is he going to say next? So what is he thinking about this and that? And kind of putting your own ego a little bit on hold in this way. But sometimes our egos are in special groups, surgeons, interventional cardiologists as well. We have so big
Yeah.
egos, you can shoot from your hip and still hit the target. So how to how to
Brilliant.
tame this ego, and actually realize that taming your ego, putting this a little bit behind in the scene, actually helps you to flourish. So that's a kind of paradoxical thought, because egocentric people think that me, me, me. It's all about me. But then we come to a team concept and team coaching and team environment, and often people think that they are actually working in a team, but it's a group. There are no team criteria.
Team
And
dynamics.
then giving this concept to them a little bit extra understanding is helpful. And um, yeah, I think that's something I want to keep doing, and you know, challenging people's thinking. Some people do not like, and especially I have got some feedback from some of our leaders. They do not like the word management, but management is management. You
It's
define
management.
management by team of people who help to accomplish the vision
Yeah.
what the leaders
Yeah.
can see and give us, and you help to make it happen. And with all respect, I think one of the things which is like, let's put it into bigger context. It's like a huge gap. Whatever we do, there is huge gap between intent and impact. And I
Mm-hmm.
think coaching can fill this space, and also by helping the doctor's team and the manager's team to come closer, because doctors often say, "Oh, managers, they are just bean counters," but that's not true. We all know that, and
Yeah.
we have ourselves to take more responsibility of coming out with your views and moaning and complaining to the right people. If we moan inside our team, it just increases our unhappiness level. But
Yes, it
if you
does.
complain the right thing, using, let's say, nonviolent communication principles,
Mm-hmm.
what I see, how does it make me feel, what is the need, what is not met, and do I want, that kind of concept, without putting labels on everything, and being non-judgmental. So that would help to close the gap between the managers
Yeah.
and doctors, perhaps. But uh,
What
so
is the
that's a
size
big
of the
task.
opportunity? What is the size of the opportunity then in the when I'm listening to you,
Mm,
everything you're saying to me kind of makes perfect sense. But in my head, and this could be an absolute
mm,
terrible judgment, but I'm sort of thinking there's there's just you here sort of spreading these good words about the right cultural vibes, the
mm,
people side, um, the authenticity required in leadership. How
mm.
much is the opportunity in these high pressured environments to really go wide and broad and get it out there?
In my view, according to my current understanding and experience, and
Yeah.
what I have learned and read and know and do in my daily practice, I think these implementing these coaching culture uh, like principles into the NHS environment, in the medical workforce, is a huge task, obviously, and I can't do it on my own. But
No.
you see the starfish story, where after a storm, a little boy is throwing starfish back to the sea, and then the old man comes and says, "Oh, that's stupid, because you never able to help all these thousands of starfish." And then the boy throws one, and says that, "Oh, I made a difference for that one." But I think that's the same thing. We need to know our values, and we need to know
Yes.
what is meaningful for us, and then do it every day. And if it there are obstacles, then we can try to turn these obstacles into action points, and actually put our heads together and change it, because everybody would like to enjoy actually these
Yes.
8 to 10 hours of working we spend every day
Yep.
during the week. In our working environment, we spend more time with our colleagues and teams at workplace than we spend time with our families. And why
Yeah.
not then to try to make it really as we want, and make it good, make it great.
Oh, you're absolutely singing our story here in terms of, I totally understand this, and it must be really it must be really challenging, but it also feels quite heartening to hear that actually, there are people like yourself out there making that
Mhm.
difference, and you are leading others and influencing others. And I suppose it's doing more and more of the talks that you talked
Yeah.
about earlier, spreading the word. Because like you said earlier, once you can go from hating all things leadership to actually being
Mhm.
turning it
Yeah.
to loving the psychology behind what makes people tick, and actually getting people
Yeah.
happier at work surely has got to be a worthy pursuit.
Yeah.
um so
Yes.
I totally understand that, absolutely. I mean, I understand that because that's everything we talk about
Yeah.
here. But um I mean, where would you see the greatest opportunities, in your line of work? What would you be advising others who can make a difference in the high pressured environments to go and do?
Yeah. I think it has to be systemic approach here. So it
Yeah,
has to be top down. So
yeah,
somehow, somehow we need to get our high end leaders, top end leaders, to listen to us, and there must be some balance between their system of or triangle of sender and receiver and processor.
yeah.
So and
Hmm.
and we all understand that they are also under high pressure. They have
Yeah,
push and pull, but still the work happens on the workshop floor, and there must be some connection with these people who are actually carrying out the work.
yeah,
So that would be the first thing in my view. And if it is a systemic approach, then it all in the end, comes from top down, and that would help. That would be obviously a huge challenge. That would require a little bit of refurbishment of old school style NHS leadership academy also.
yeah.
Uh, I don't want to be too critical, but it's just how to make it more applicable, and how to start with exploring and explaining and spreading these skills from the very early stage, already from trainees level. So
Yes.
if a medical trainee comes to the hospital environment, so they can be sometimes uh, really find themselves like in a kind of alienated world where there is
Yeah.
bullying and there are uh, unacceptable behaviors. And where does this behavior come from? What causes that? So it's it's a lot to do with managing stress and managing
Yes.
workload,
Yeah.
and creating these conditions for people who work in this kind of high pressure environment, how to be able to recover from all that. You see, stress is not killing. What kills is no recovery, lack of recovery. If it comes all the time on, and there is no uh, space for recovery, then that's what kills us. Because stress is actually quite useful sometimes, and there is often, positive side of a stress.
Yeah.
It can be inspiring also, and it can be
Hmm.
motivating, and actually make change, more easy, because there is an element of urgency, but it
But the
has to be put.
sustainability of stress
Yeah,
is the burnout, isn't it? And that's when it's
yeah,
detrimental, and we hear of it more and more. And
exactly.
and whether there's
Yeah,
higher incidences in the NHS,
yeah, exactly.
because it's such the high pressured environment.
But it also comes down to, and has its kind of reflections and impact on our patients, because if you are stressed and you overwhelmed, and you lose your creativity. That's one of the sides of negative stress, that you are so stressed that everything is overwhelming. One more extra thing, you just go into a defense mode, and you drop below the line. If the line would be the
Yeah.
model of any sort of you know leadership or any sort of doing, then if you are above the line, then you are like the sun. You're open, you are generous, you are um, passionate. If you are below the line, then you are on defense, and there are only dark clouds. And when that happens, and you are in interactions with your patients, then your letters become very short. Your um, empathy level drops,
Drops,
because
yeah.
there is just no space, no margin. And how to recognize this lack of margin is an important thing. Also, that's one of my kind of passions, also to talk about margin. What is it, and how to improve it, and how to automate, how to say no, how to be more efficient in control, do less, do it
Do better.
more effortlessly. And yeah, so there are many aspects. There are aspects on individual level, and then a bigger picture at leadership level. And I think if we want to change anything, then this has to start from the top level.
So
So
your advice is that systemic approach to,
yeah.
I suppose, building the right culture, allowing others
Hmm.
to identify when they're maybe at that level, when they're not
Yeah.
feeling the sunshine, the dark clouds are there because they've taken too much on, they're not saying
Yeah.
no, and lacking all creativity.
Hmm.
I totally understand that. And
Yeah.
listening to this, I recognize sometimes in myself, if I feel extra busy,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
have to stop and have a word with
Yeah.
myself and think, hang on, what do I need to do to fill my
Yeah.
cup up here a bit more? Because
Exactly.
I'm not being as creative or as a good leader, to be honest,
Yeah.
because you lower your own level line of
Yeah.
defense, really. It's for all of us, I guess, in
Hmm.
positions where we
Yeah.
influence others and support others. It's our role to keep
Yeah.
others safe, I guess.
And what you said, we can call it, skill of self-assessment, and that's part
Hmm.
of the emotional intelligence
Yes.
kind of package of
Yeah,
various skills. And we can, improve these things, and we
definitely.
can we can definitely make people happier in this respect when they recognize that these are actually the strengths. These are things I can do better. I can be a better listener. I can be more curious. I can, make the gap between my intent and impact smaller. So,
I have to say, you make me feel very calm while we're talking. I feel this real sense of calmness. I can see why you would be brilliant being that leader and coach in a high pressured environment, but you've still got this super calm. I'm feeling really calm having our conversation, whereas normally I'm all, oh,
I'm not
this
coaching
is
you.
really. I know you're not, but I just feel really
Good.
calm listening to you.
Mm,
You've got a really powerful story and message to
mm,
share. And I
yeah.
think that the more we get that out to share that to the
Mm.
world, the better. Um, you need to get that podcast sorted then.
Yes, that's my next big project. Uh, and then perhaps summarize the stories and
Yeah,
uh, all these views later in a little writing, perhaps.
brilliant.
So the idea related to my podcast is to depict, you know, the same question from various angles. Who is a good leader in
Yeah,
medical environment?
yeah,
In healthcare, and what are the characteristics, and how can we develop these characteristics, and how can we become better in that. So
brilliant.
that's the rough idea. I have
Super.
yes,
Go
I have
on.
agreed several persons already to be part of that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we should hold you to account on this. When are you going to do it? When's going to be the first one?
I guess now when we have moved into this lovely old cottage and
Yeah.
things get under better control here, and my to-do list, my wife gives me always a long to-do list. When it
Brilliant.
becomes slightly shorter, so I guess October time would be the first
Brilliant.
out. Yeah,
Fantastic. Oh, well, I
yeah,
look forward to hearing that. You'll have to drop us a note and tell us
yes,
when you're launching it, and we'll have to
yes,
listen in, because I can imagine you having some fascinating conversations. I mean, is there anything
yes.
else you'd like to share with our listeners today? Anything about, what you see out there, what you'd like to, give us your last final piece of advice, top tip, anything
Mm.
at all? What would it be?
I think if we put it into this perspective, that if someone who is a non medical person, and let's say in a role of a relative or a patient, then just please be patient. We are all working hard, and
Yeah.
things go slowly at the moment. We have huge backlog, and we all need a lot of patience. People always think that my problem is the most important, and that's pretty normal, and that's how we think. But uh, I guess it's not very helpful to compare yourself to others either. But there is a there is a way out, but it would require a little bit of patience. And if the listener is a colleague, then I think a good question is this kind of self coaching question, that if I would be the most resourceful person in this role, so what would be the best thing to do? And
Brilliant.
I also try to implement this into my medical practice, and I tell to my patients that instead of me telling you what to do, think that you are the healthiest person on this planet, and what would a healthy person do? What options do you have? Are you going to take staircase or lift, or park close to the door or entrance, or far away? A healthy person would park far away and take a lovely walk, and then that helps them to discover. They know what to do. You don't need to tell them.
No.
It's very seldom when you need to tell something which they never have heard before, because people are quite educated nowadays. And yeah, and for the leaders in healthcare, just try to be more mindful listener.
Yeah. Brilliant. That is fabulous. Listening, be resourceful, self-coaching. You're getting all of it here today to get people to really think through how can they be resourceful for themselves, for their teams. This
Mm,
has been a fabulous conversation. I think your podcast needs to be called All Heart. That's what I think it
mm,
needs to be called, the All Heart podcast, because that kind of sums up you through
yeah,
and through, I think. It's
yeah.
been brilliant. Absolutely. How can people contact you? What would be the best way if they wanted to get in touch or hear you further?
Yes, the best way would be probably via LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
Yeah, that
LinkedIn's always a
that would
good
be the
place.
easiest way.
Oh,
Yes.
fantastic. Well, make sure you share, when you launch your podcast, it will be,
Hmm.
listening into your guests, get it out there on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll attract a lot of people fascinated by, and your wise words, absolutely wise words. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for your time today. I've really, really enjoyed your conversation.
Thank you, Joe. It was a great pleasure and a great honor. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening to the Coaching Culture podcast. Again, please do tune in for more fabulous guests like Dr. Toomas. Thank you.